Good morning, guys. For our second section of Wordsmith, it is my honor to introduce a person who has captured the hearts of readers around the world with her gripping novels. Today, we have the incredible pleasure of hosting a truly remarkable author, Miss Megan Collins. How are you, Megan?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good too. Welcome to our podcast, where we delve into the captivating world of literature and the brilliant minds behind it. Megan's writing explores the depths of human psyche, delving into themes of suspense, mystery, and the complexities of relationships. Her keen understanding of human nature and her exceptional talent, crafting intricate narratives have earned her critical acclaim and a dedicated fan base. In our conversation today, we will have the privilege of diving into Megan's creative processes, her inspirations, and how writing has shaped her life. Megan's journey as an author has been nothing short of extraordinary, and we are thrilled to have the opportunity to learn from her experiences. Her insights into the writing processes, her reflections on the power of storytelling, and her unique perspectives on human condition are sure to captivate and inspire us all tonight. So, without further ado, let us embark on this enlightening journey as we uncover the depths of Megan Collins' literary world. Shall we commence, Megan?
Yes.
All right. So, the first question we have is, as a successful author, you have undoubtedly encountered, various challenges and successes in your writing career. How have these experiences influenced your growth as an individual and your personality overall?
Well, I think that being in the publishing world and kind of like knowing that I want to publish a book and then publish the next book and publish the next book and gain readers each time, it's changed the way I think about writing, which I don't know if it's for in good ways or bad ways, but when you're just writing for yourself, it's just about you and the page. But when you start to think about the audience, sorry, when you start to think about the audience, um, there's kind of an added pressure of like,
Yeah, yeah.
how are people going to receive this? Is this going to resonate with anybody? And that can be a good thing for sure, because it kind of focuses the way that you're writing. But it can also be kind of a stressful thing.
Mhm.
So I think that like publishing has so many ups and downs. And one day you might get a piece of good news and the next day you get a piece of bad news, and that's just how it is. And like publishing is such a business that's so separate from the actual art of writing and why we do it and what it does for us. So one thing that I've had to like try to learn is how to keep those modes separate for myself, to think, okay, what happens with my books is out of my control. The only thing I can do is write the story that means something to me and that I think or I hope will mean something to my readers. So in a way, any successes or any failures or any rejections along the way, it's kind of peripheral to what the actual work is,
Yeah.
because one day people love you, the next they're giving you a 1-star review on Goodreads, and it's not
Roller
about
coaster.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. And so it can be really hard to kind of like block out all that noise and all that extra stuff. So kind of all that big roller coaster has just made me realize like how precious just the act of writing is itself, and like that relationship with writing and the relationship with hopefully the people who will read it, and to just keep that in mind instead of like,
The whole, getting it outside into the
yeah,
thing, right?
exactly,
That is
which
a
can be
pressure.
really hard, but yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, speaking of like additional pressures, I know for that for me quite often, and I've like if you've watched from our channel, you know that I've asked this question before. When I published my own small little novel, I experienced writer's block quite often. So, we talk about like publishing and like the external aspect of it,
Yeah.
but internally when you're actually doing the writing process, how do you get past like this difficult stage of writing that on like a global level writers face, right? This
Mhm.
phenomenon of writer's block. How do you get past that?
So the thing that I always say, both to myself and anybody who is experiencing writer's block, is just like first and foremost to be super kind to yourself about it, because I think we have the tendency to be like, to get really frustrated and to say, why can't I produce today? Why can't I write 500 words or whatever it is? But I genuinely believe that a lot of times when we're experiencing that block, it's because our brains need to recharge and we need to just refill the creative well in a different way that isn't writing, so that when our brains are ready to do it again, we have more to pull from. But I also like being an author who is under contract a lot of times and has deadlines. Like, I definitely have moments where I'm staring at my computer screen and the words are not coming the way I want them to, but I kind of have to make sure they come anyway because I can't really afford not to. And so I have a bunch of like little tricks that I do and that I recommend to people, which is to kind of break it down for yourself into like smaller bits. Say, okay, I'm just going to write like 50 words. And then, because to me, the writer's block comes from the bigness of it and the bigness and blankness of it. And if you,
Intimidation, right? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and if you can say, I'm just going to do this little thing, then a lot of times you end up going past that little goal just because it gets you going. Or sometimes I will give myself a small assignment to write to a word, which for me means I'll open up usually I use a book of poetry, and I open it up to a random page. I put my finger down on a random word, and whatever that word is, I have to somehow write to get to that word. So if it's thunder and I have like a scene on a sunny day, I'm like, okay, well, thunder, maybe somebody's voice is thunderous, and maybe that's how I bring it in. So I do that. And then the last thing is this piece of advice that the author Megan Abbott said on a podcast one time, which was her main writing advice to people is just write badly, which I love that. I put it on a sticky note that I keep on my desk. And because I think so many times when we have that writer's block, it's because we're fighting against the desire to have it be good, to have what we write be good and write a great story or a great poem or whatever it is. But I think if you can let go of that and just say, it doesn't matter how good it is, that's something I can revise later. I'm just going to get words on the page. I'm just going to write the scene or the feeling, whatever it is. And if you give yourself that permission to write badly, it's so freeing, I've found. And a lot of times after one of my write badly like times, I look back and I'm like, that wasn't actually that bad. And I think it's just because you free yourself from that pressure again. So those are some of my like tips and tricks for powering through that, because it's something that happens to everybody.
I like the one with like the you open to a random poetry book and you like that's a creative. I haven't even heard that one before, right? Like I've interviewed different people and that one's really unique and interesting. I like that one. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I
then you
think
can just like once you get to the first word, then you do it again. You go to another page, you find another word that you're then writing to.
is that easy? Okay, okay. I'll
Well,
definitely because
it
like
sounds easier than it probably
I'll
is when
probably
you're actually sitting there, but yeah.
then I think no, like for my college essays and things like that, I think I'm definitely like I'm gonna try using that one
Oh
going
yeah,
forward. Yeah. Okay, would you mind me going to the next question now?
sure.
All right. Okay, so for some context now, some of our writers are from diverse backgrounds that come from like, challenging family situations, life-threatening diseases from like hospitals or, just hard times in general. And so we thought the following question would be incredibly helpful for those type of children and those young writers. And so writing is often seen as a form of self-expression or catharsis. How has the process of writing helped you navigate and make sense of your emotions and experiences, whether it be like through difficult times or times where you felt excited? How has like writing helped like kind of helped you escape that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I always say that I write to clarify how I feel to myself. Like a lot of times I'll think I know how I feel, and it's only in the act of writing that I come upon a sentence or a way that I've put the words together that I'm like, oh, like that's what it was. And I won't know that in a concrete way until I do the writing. So, I think that that is the magic of writing, that it seems like we're in such control of it because we're choosing which words to put down, but there's such an unconscious level to it, that like experiences that we've had, hardships that we've had, it's all working out through that. And you might not even be thinking you're writing about the hardship or like a certain experience, but then you write something that you're like, oh, that's referring to that moment of my life. And yeah, so for me, like writing is just a way to clarify things for myself, and it is like a
Express yourself.
cathartic thing. And I remember I was talking to my therapist one time, and I was telling her about this project I was working on and how it was related to something I had gone through, but now I was putting it in sort of a fictional sense. And she's like, oh, so your writing is like therapy. And I was like, yes, that's
Yeah,
that's exactly what it is. And sometimes, when you're sitting there typing or writing on a piece of paper, like you're not actively thinking, I'm doing therapy right now, I'm being cathartic for myself, like I'm soothing my soul. Like you don't think that, but
it just happens.
yeah, it just happens. And so I think that it's just such a great way for people to be in touch with themselves.
Yeah, do you think that like so from people I've spoken to before, there's like different takes on this. Do you think that like from what I've heard, you're saying it's like the act of writing that naturally it just comes, right? Do you think it's the process of writing it, or do you think it's like the like being in your character's shoes that helps you get through it? Do you think it's like if you really introspect on that, like do you think just sitting there in front of your desk, warm lights are on, you have a cup of
Mhm.
tea next to you. Do you think it's that kind of therapy, or do you think it's like, you're in your character's shoes and your character is going through something maybe similar to what you're going through? And you're like, do you think it's kind of like that?
Yeah, I think that when you're writing a character, there's naturally that bit of distance between you and between your experience and what they're experiencing. Even if it's like loosely based on something you've gone through, I don't believe that if you're writing fiction, I don't believe that any character is like 100% the writer or anything
No.
like that. You're always inventing things. And a lot of times it's nothing of the writer in the character. Um, so I do think that sometimes having that distance allows you the freedom to not even realize that you are putting those parts of yourself into them. And like this just happened to me the other day. I had a character who's experiencing something that, oh God, like I hope I never experience it. I'm a thriller writer, so like it's always pretty
Yeah, no.
dark. But so she was going through that, but I was sort of relying on this memory that I had, a specific thing that I'd gone through, for just this like little flashback for her that was going to be like 3 sentences. And then I worded it in such a way that I was like, oh wow, like that was what I was feeling in that moment back then when that happened. That felt really bad, but I didn't know why it felt so bad, and like this is why. And it took having the character do those things and have that little journey for me to be able to do that. So I do think that part of the therapeutic aspect is the distance that you get from it, because it's really hard to like go deep into yourself and go into those dark places. And so it feels a little safer when you're working with a character.
I definitely, yeah, that's a really cool experience to have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, next question.
Mhm.
All right. So, I like this one. Okay. So I know that we can't just I like this one and the next one. But okay, well, I'll do this one. So I know that we can't just generate stories with like the snap of our fingers. So what's your process on turning an event in your life into a story on a blank piece of paper? So like is there a good framework or some sort of procedure that you have that you do while you're writing to turn like that event into something you can write down for your characters?
Yeah, so my process is like I'll have a premise in my head that I get kind of obsessed with. And if I feel like there's something in that premise that I connect with on a deep emotional level, not just like, oh, that would be an interesting story, I'd want to see that. But if there's something that I feel like, something I've experienced or something I believe that that premise, the story, can act as sort of like a metaphor for, even if the situation of the story is nothing like my situation, but the feelings are the same.
Hmm.
Once I have that, I'm like, okay, this is good. This can be something. And from there, this is just how my brain works. But once I know the beginning, I have to figure out the end. Um, and part of that is because I'm working in the like mystery thriller genre. So like for me, it helps to know where I'm going. And once I have an idea of the characters in the beginning and then the ending, I come up with what's going to happen in the middle of the book that is going to be like either a midpoint twist or a midpoint reveal, something that sends the characters in a completely different direction. They thought they were on one journey, now they're on another. And so once I have that beginning, middle, and end, I kind of like go and fill in, okay, what needs to happen from the beginning to get to the middle, and then the same from the middle to the end. And of course, that makes it sound so much easier than it really is. It's an agonizing process. It's weeks and whatever. But also, I find that different craft texts have really been influential for me in just learning how to plot and structure a story. So like, I really like Save the Cat Writes a Novel. That's I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but it's a weird title. Save the Cat Writes a Novel. I also really like Story Genius. Those are two that I recommend a lot for anybody who wants to write like novels, because they help you with that like, okay, I have an idea. How do I go from that to putting it on the page? Because they tell you like, at this point in your story, you should be hitting this beat. At this point in the story, this kind of thing should happen. And it makes it seem like a formula, which can maybe cheapen it, but it's not. It's more just about how, like, from like ancient times, this is how stories are told and how our brains are like hardwired to understand story. So those books are really helpful in doing the whole like plotting things out and all that.
Oh, okay, I like that. I think that's really cool, right? Like especially bringing like those two novels, and I think those are something we can recommend to our viewers. But
Mm-hmm.
like that process of turning something that happens in your life and then bringing in the history of how people have done it in the past and
Yeah.
then incorporating that, I think that's a really cool one. All right, so this is probably my favorite question, mainly because I think it's like the most applicable to our lives
Mm-hmm.
as students. Do you think for our young productive students and authors that a good daily routine is important for successful writing? And if so, would you be comfortable sharing yours with us?
Yeah, so I know there are a lot of people out there who say, like, to be a writer, you have to write every single day. Make sure you're writing every single day. And I just feel like that advice or that guidance is so unrealistic and kind of harsh. I mean, like, we have lives, we have things that come up. We can't necessarily write every single day. With that said, I think everybody dictates their own routine, and it's a very personal thing that is goes along with however your mind works and however your creativity works. So if writing every single day is helpful for you, then yeah, you should write every single day. If you write for a couple days and then you need a few days to recharge, that's totally fine too. And so I just kind of hate that advice of write every single day, because I think it's really restricting and it's not true to how we are as creative people.
Thinkers, right?
Um, yeah, so for my personal routine, like I kind of, again, because I'm under contract with books, I kind of have to make myself write every day. I don't write every day, but I write or I try to write every weekday and then take the weekends to recharge. But so I try to get to my desk by like about 9 o'clock, and then I allow myself like 15 minutes to a half hour of goofing off on social media and stuff.
Of
And
course.
then I try to put my phone in a drawer because otherwise it's so distracting. And I set a timer for 20 minutes. And I tell myself, okay, in 20 minutes, I can check my email, I can check Twitter, whatever it is. Um, and so then I just write for those 20 minutes. And again, it's like that thing of before with the write badly. It's like when you say, okay, it's just going to be 20 minutes, like it takes off the pressure, and you can just do it. And then often like you get in a groove and then the timer goes off and you're like, oh wait, I have more to
Not done yet.
say. Yeah.
Mhm.
So then once the 20 minutes is over, I take a real quick break, and then I go back for another 20 minutes, and I just kind of keep doing that throughout the day until I meet my word count goal for the day, which for me, if my deadline is kind of like far in the future, I try to keep it reasonable for me, which is like 500 words.
Mm.
If my deadline's closer, I'll say, okay, I have to do 1,000 words at minimum for the day. And the reason I try to keep the 500 one to be so reasonable is because then anything I write over that, it's just a mind game. But I feel like I'm like, oh, I'm a rock star. I'm the writing winner of the day because I
Mhm.
wrote over my goal. So like half of writing and getting myself to write and getting progress in my drafts is all about like mind tricks and manipulating myself. Like even the 20-minute timer is sort of a manipulation, but that's kind of what you have to do sometimes to keep the draft going.
It's like
Because
tricking yourself into doing it, so it's like for a good cause, right?
yeah, exactly.
And I do have a follow-up. So like do you think, and I spoke with previous people again, but like do you think that you are a morning person or a night owl? Do you think like that plays a role in how well you write things or
Yeah, I definitely am fresher in the morning. And so I always try to get as much as I can done can do before I break for lunch, because I know that after lunch I'm going to start to get really like I'm going to lose some steam. Yep, I'm going to be like, when is nap time? And so I mean, if I have to keep going, I keep going because I have to meet the word count goal. But yeah, I'm not somebody who can really write late at night because I'm like, no, it's bedtime. It's my reading time. Like my mind is just like not working well at that point. So I'm definitely someone who writes in the morning more.
I like that. Yeah, I think I'm a morning person too, so something cool to keep in mind. All right, next question. Oh, actually, okay, this is our last question, actually. I didn't think of that. Okay, yeah. So, writing is a process of continuous learning and growth. Do you have any further advice as this interview comes to a close to those who love spinning tales, either as a hobby or perhaps as a potential passion-filled career? Any tips, last minute advice, things like that for young writers?
Yeah, so I think that the really the best thing you can do as a young writer is to read as much as possible. Um, in the genre that you want to be writing, outside of the genre that you want to be writing, just absorb as much as you can, because other writers are our best teachers. And I was a creative writing teacher for 12 years, and I would sometimes have students who like liked writing, but they were like, oh, I don't like reading. And I was like, well, how are you gonna know what to write if you don't read, or if you don't see like how other people are doing it? And I remember the first novel that I wrote, which didn't end up getting published or anything. It's just shelved now. But um, I I didn't know the supposed rules yet of like structure with novels that I talked about that I found in those craft texts later on. But still, because I had read so much throughout my life, I sort of intuitively knew them. Like I didn't have words for what this is when this happens in the book, or what that is when that happens, but I just kind of knew the shape and structure that the story was supposed to take. And that all comes from reading. And I mean, you can get as much training in writing as you want. And I think that there's a huge benefit to that. Mostly, I think the benefit in that is that you're usually surrounded by a community of writers when that
You
happens. And
consistently
so,
write with that coming. Okay, yeah.
yeah, so then you're learning from other writers. Like if you're in a workshop or something, you're hearing what they do. So, and I think that there's something valuable even in things you read that you don't like, because then that's not saying if you're reading a book and it's terrible and you are torturing yourself. Like I'm a big believer in just put it aside. There's too many books out there that are amazing. Like don't waste your time with a book you're not enjoying. But even still, you can say to yourself, okay, what was it about that made me not want to continue reading? And you're learning
Oh,
something from that. You're saying, okay, well, the dialogue was kind of wooden and I couldn't connect to it. So then in that case, you're learning how you want your dialogue to be. So that is what I always tell young writers: just read as much as you can, um, in the kind of style you want. Outside of it, it's all going to influence you. It's all going to teach you.
do you think that like taking notes while you read, do you think that do you support that, or do you think that like again you were mentioning how like noticing the specific things that like why I didn't appeal to this specific genre maybe, or this specific kind of writing,
Mhm.
but like do you think that like for book clubs or things like that at school, do you like the fact that you have to take notes consistently? Do you think that's helpful for young writers?
So again, I think it depends on who the writer is. Like for me, when I read a book, if I were to stop and take notes, I think that would pull me out of the story too
Yeah.
much. Um, but for some people, that pulls them into the story deeper. So again, like I say, you have to do what works for you, and you have to do what is fulfilling to you, and what like works with your process and your creativity. So I think it's worth trying. I think anything's worth trying. Try it and see if that helps you get absorbed into the story more, or if it seems like you're like it becomes torturous because you keep slowing down and you're like taking so many breaks, then don't do it. Sometimes I know people who have reading journals where after they read the whole book, they'll then write notes about like, what did I like, what did I not like, what kinds of things would I like to try in my writing, and things like that. So that's another way to think of it. So you're not just like stopping every time you have a thought in the book. But I also know a lot of people who love annotating their books and writing in the margins, and like, not me, I'm always like, no, the page is like, it needs to remain like beautiful on the sides, and I will mess it up. But yeah, so it's really what works
Push the
for the
patience.
individual.
Okay, okay. Well, okay, I think that's about it. Thank you so much for you spending your time on this. It's gonna mean a lot to like the young writers and readers, as we were talking about, around the world, because this is ongoing on YouTube, right? Who are interested in writing and maybe hopefully want to pursue it either as a hobby, as a career. So yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me to be here.
Of course, let me just pause.